Hello and welcome to the ninth episode of the Data Science Daily series. And I'm very excited to welcome you back again to this series. And today we will be talking about Python, right? Remember, we are in the complete Python bootcamp sessions. So today's goal is to understand, how do you install the environment for Python? How do you work with Python, right? So firstly, we will see and understand what are IDEs, which are integrated development environments, and we will talk about a few popular ones there in the market. Then we will look over how do you install Python on your own system. And then finally, we will talk about how do you install some more functionalities in the Python interface that you will be using. Specifically, it is called Jupyter Notebook. So this is the plan for today. We have a lot to cover, so let's get started. Let me quickly share my screen. All right. So integrated development environments for Python, right? What are these, right? This is a new terminology that we are introducing. What is an IDE? An IDE is a software application that combines many tools for software development all in one place, right? Tools like debugging, autocomplete features, right? If you want to look up the documentation of the particular package that you're going to be using, remember we discussed the concept of a package in the previous session. So if you are not aware of what do we mean by a package or a library, it's very important that you go back to the previous session where we introduced Python programming and learn that. So all of these different tools, right, for software development are in one place, and that's what we call an integrated development environment. What are these tools? Typically code editing with syntax highlighting and auto completion, right? So the syntax can get highlighted depending on what kind of a syntax it is, right? If it's a function, if it's, different kinds of syntax, it gets highlighted in a different manner in different integrated development environments, right? So it depends on the IDE tool that you will be using, how, the syntax will be highlighted. And auto completion is another feature that is there. Debugging tools are there to find and fix errors, right? Project management features are there to organize your code. In a few IDEs, you have project management features as well, right? You can connect to Git, for example. Version control, that's what we were just talking about actually. Git is about version control. So you have version control integration to track changes. And there are a lot of other tools as well that are there available in IDEs. Okay, now let's look at some popular IDEs or popular development environments. Spider. Now this is one of the basic ones out there, and it's not as popular and as widely used than the other ones. The community support is a bit smaller for Spider. Nevertheless, if you're starting out, you might want to try out Spider as well, right? Or if you're an existing user, it's okay if you're continuing to use it, but there are better, powerful options out there. PyCharm. PyCharm is a very powerful IDE, right? It allows you to do multiple things like debugging, auto-completion, right? The management side of it. And it's built specifically for Python, right? In the name itself, you have PyCharm. So it's built specifically for Python, right? So it's very nice in that way. The downside is there is a cost to the professional version, which has a lot of features. So there is a bit of cost involved with it, right? And you would generally want to go for the professional version to avail of all of those features. Then you have what I can call one of my personal favorites when I see people developing in this environment. This is Visual Studio Code, right? And Visual Studio Code is a very, very general, powerful IDE. You can use it to develop regular software engineering projects as well as Python projects, right? And it's very powerful, right? So it's the best one out there. If you want to have a strong level of coding proficiency and do the best standard coding, it's good to always get started with Visual Studio Code. The downside is it has a higher learning curve for beginners, so it's not very easy to learn when you're just starting out, right, with programming itself. But if you are already a data scientist or a software developer and you're looking to upskill, this will be the IDE that you should transition to if you are looking at some other IDEs. And then finally, to our IDE of choice, right, which we will cover in these sessions, is Jupyter. Now, Jupyter is a very nice IDE for doing exploratory data analysis, for sharing notebooks, right? So in this IDE, the files that we save are called notebooks, right? Generally, we save notebooks. We also can save scripts, etc. But Jupyter notebooks are what we are going to use and what we are going to get started with. It enables us to do interactive Python. You can just run each line of code of Python and see the output as well, right? So this is the IDE that we will be focusing on. Okay, now let's come into understanding and starting to do some hands-on installing Python. So here is where I want you to stop the video whenever you see that one step has been covered. Make sure you have completed that one step before you move to the next step. So the first step is download Anaconda Distribution. We talked about this yesterday. It's a meta package manager which has a lot of packages automatically. It installs them, and it also helps you install Python 3.9 as well, right? So go to this link, right? anaconda.com/product/distribution. So if I click here, it's a free download, right? And they're advertising it as like everything you need to get started in data science on your workstation. And I agree, right? It's the most popular distribution out there for data science. It's open source, user friendly, trusted. Okay. All right. So how do we download this? So you need to go to downloads at the bottom, right? You have Anaconda installers. Now, if you're using a Windows machine, you will have the 64-bit installer. If you're using MacBook like I am, right, you have different installers. And then Linux also, you have different installers, right? So if you have an M1 chip MacBook, then you have these two installers. Otherwise, right, you have the first two installers. And there is a graphical installer and a command line installer. So let's always, for now, install using the graphical installer. I already have Python on my machine, so I'm not going to install it again, but I'm just going to show you that you should click one of these depending on what version you want or what machine you are on. Download this package, right? So this will be downloaded as a file, and then go through the steps to install that graphically using the GUI, graphical user interface, right? So once you have done that, right, make sure you're completing the step before watching the video further. So make sure you're installing Python, the latest version, right? So this is actually Python 3.11. So please ignore this here where we are saying Python 3.9. This is a bit old instructions, right? Now we are looking at Python 3.11. So install that. Now, once you have installed that, right, make sure you are only seeing the step after you have installed and gone through all the installation steps of that installer. You need to launch Jupyter Notebook. So if you're using Windows, go to the Start menu and then look for Anaconda Navigator. If you're using MacBook like I am, you'll see how we can do that. So search for Anaconda Navigator and click Enter. Okay. So in my machine, there is some issue. It's not really opening. I'll need to download it again. Anyways, if you open it, you will see this interface, right? This is the Anaconda Navigator. And it has different functions as well, right? Different applications as well. So if you look at here, it has the data spell for exploratory data analysis. It has Jupyter Lab. It has Jupyter Notebook. And it has Spider as well. It has PyCharm Professional. It is RStudio, right? A lot of different services are there. But what we are concerned with is with Jupyter Notebook, right? So if you click on launch here, right? If you click launch under Jupyter Notebook, what would happen is you will see a browser open up, right? Whichever is your default browser, and it will go to a link called localhost 8888, right? So after you click launch, you should see a black terminal window opening up, and you should see something on your browser interface. Let me try to launch that same Jupyter Notebook another way, right? So don't worry about what I'm just doing right now. It's another way to launch Jupyter Notebook directly using the terminal. Because I don't have access to the navigator right now, I'm just using the terminal itself to launch my Jupyter Notebook interface. Right, so this is the Jupyter interface. And what you can see is you will see files as a tab, you will see running, and you will see clusters. You will not see NB extensions right now by default, right? So we'll see how you can also have this and why this is useful. So you will see this interface. This is the Jupyter interface. And then what you need to do is you need to go to new, right? Here you will see notebook and you will see other, right? There will be two tabs. So notebook, you have the Python 3 notebook, and then others, you can also create text files, you can create folders, or you can create terminal. So what we are concerned with is creating a Python 3 notebook, right? And when you click that, this is the screen that will open up for you. Now, if you're doing this for the first time, a lot of this might have sounded confusing. So let me go back and repeat what we have just done so far. Let's start with the step one. You download the Anaconda distribution with respect to which machine you are using. Always go ahead with the graphical installer when you're starting out right now. Install that. That will be installed as some kind of a file. Open that installer file and then go through the installation steps. Make sure you complete the installation steps before moving to step two. In step two, what you have to do is you have to search for the Anaconda Navigator application. Click that, and what you would see, you will see a window open up, which will look like this, and it will have different applications within it. So what we are concerned with here right now is the Jupyter Notebook. It is a web-based interactive computing notebook environment. Click on Launch button, and when you click on Launch button, what you would see is you would see this page open up for you, right? This page should open up for you. And actually, this will open up in your root folder. So you will see desktop, downloads, all of the other folders in your computer machine, right? You need to navigate to the folder where you are going to do your data science development. Or you can just create a new folder. So you can go to New, create a folder, right? So this untitled folder has been created. Then select it and click Rename. And you can say this is my data science development folder, right? Once you have renamed it, go into that, right? And within this, you can create a new notebook, right? So this is the notebook that you can launch. And this is what we are trying to cover. This is now where you are ready with the Python kernel. You can see on the top right, this is the Python 3 kernel. You can start writing and executing Python code, right? So if I write 1 plus 1, Python is telling me it is 2, right? If I say length of, I'm writing some Python code, this should be 3, right? So I'm writing Python code now, and this is your interactive environment. You can see that I'm giving an input and I'm getting an output just after that. I'm giving one line of input, I'm getting one line of output. I can also give multiple lines of input, right? So I can say print 1, 2, 3, and I can also say print this is our complete Python bootcamp. So it has printed it, right? It has printed both 1, 2, 3, and this is a complete Python bootcamp. So you can run multiple commands in the same cell, right? This is what we are referring to as a cell. This individual line where you're actually writing code, this is a cell. Even this entire thing, right? Wherever this is 3, this is the 3rd cell in the notebook. If you make something here, this will be the 4th cell, and so on. So each of these are cells, right? All right. So let's understand now a bit about the Jupyter Notebook interface as well, right? And I will recap what we just covered as well for this particular chapter. So what we did right now is we entered 1 plus 1, we got 2. We then entered another Python command, we got 3. And then we entered multiple Python commands, we got the output for all of them, right? So these are the cells where you execute Python code, and each cell is numbered in Python once the command has been run. If something is running, right, let me put something like for while I in don't worry about what I'm writing. I just want to show you. See, it's running now, right? So this is this asterisk means that it is running. So it's not completely run. Once it runs, it will show the number 9 because this is the ninth cell that we have executed in the code, right? And you can see that it will print this multiple times. So what I can do is I can just stop this here, and it will interrupt the kernel, right? Kernel is just referring to this entire notebook, right? We are running it, so it will interrupt this, and it's a bit slow. So what I'll do instead is I will just shut down this notebook itself directly, right? So I'm shutting it down, and I will again restart it. So this is something you need to keep in mind, right? Let me show it to you again. When I shut it down, right, focus on the top right. So we'll see that kernel is starting. It will show on the top right here, right? Kernel starting, please wait, kernel ready, and that's it. And it's starting very quickly. The kernel is starting for Python 3. So it's loading Python 3 and it's ready for us to use, right? So this is a Jupyter interface, and you should all have access to this at this particular point. No matter if you're using a MacBook or a Windows machine or a Linux, this should be common for you all. All right. So this is what we discussed. But now, one downside of Jupyter Notebook is that it's difficult sometimes to organize the code because you're writing it in all of these cells, right? How do you organize it? So what you can do for organization is you can use Markdown cells, right? If you click this drop down, right, in this bar, you have code, you have a Markdown, you have raw NB convert, and you have a heading. So let me go to an empty cell and let me select Markdown, right? So you can see now that the brackets have disappeared and I can just write Markdown code. So the formatting of this cell is saying that you can only write Markdown code. If I write 1 plus 1, it will not give me 2. It will print that as a Markdown. However, if I change this type again to code and type 1 plus 1, it will give me 2. If I change it again to Markdown, it will just be a Markdown. Okay, so this is about Markdown, right? And similarly, we have heading as well. So it doesn't use this, right? So yeah, it's a bit outdated. Let's not use that. I also don't use that at all. I just want to show you. But main things are code and Markdown, right? So let's use Markdown. And let's type something like hash heading 1, right? And let me press 1 plus 1, 2, and so on. So now you can see that I have an arrow, bottom arrow here, but you will not have that. And I can collapse this, right? So this is an extension of the Jupyter interface, which I've already installed. For you to install this, right, let's understand how do you install Jupyter extensions. So you need to run 3 commands on the command line, right? And this will work for most of the Mac and Linux users. But for the Windows users, you might face some issues. So please ping me in the chat if you're facing any issues and we will go over that. Right, so run these 3 commands: pip install Jupyter _contrib _NB extensions. Right, let me show you how to run it. So go to the terminal. Right, in case of Windows, you will have a command prompt instead. That will be the name of the application. For Mac, it is just terminal. Right, type pip install. Remember, pip is the Python package index that we just discussed last session. Right, so we are trying to install something from pip, Jupyter contrib NB extensions, and this will tell me that it's already been installed, right? Requirement already satisfied. So it's not useful for me, right? So it's already installed. Now the second one is, but it will install for you, right? So make sure you are doing that. Then go to Jupyter NB extensions _configurator _enable. Without the underscore, last word is enable. It's already enabled actually, right? So it's enabled. And then finally, the last command is Jupyter contrib NB extension install -- user. There is a double hyphen which is not showing in the PPT, right, in the presentation, but it's double hyphen like this that you should have. And then press enter to execute it. So it's done. And this is the first step that you need to do on the command line. Make sure you're doing this completely before going over to the next step. After that, again, you need to relaunch your Jupyter Notebook. Similar way, go to the Anaconda Navigator, launch it, right? And then what you would see is, like I am seeing, you will see an NB extensions tab here as well. So you click that NB extensions tab, right? And you can enable collapsible headings. And there are other extensions as well you can enable, right? So if you look here, you will have a collapsible headings right here. So I'm having it here. You might have it at a different place. Make sure the tick mark is enabled along with this. So collapsible headings is enabled, right? And there will be some enablements by default, right? So I think some of these are by default as well. So once you enable this and then you go to the files, and let's say you relaunch this notebook, right, that we were just looking at, you will see that this drop down has been enabled for you. So right, so to make a section, you just need to select that cell, make sure it is blue colored, right? It's not like this. Even if it's like that, actually with the cursor, it will still work. Select it to be Markdown, right? Click here, make sure you are entering hashes, let's say 2 hashes, heading 2, let's make it 3 hashes. So this is a subheading of this bigger heading, right? We can also have with 3 or 4 as well, right? So this will be a smaller heading section, and we can organize our code within these particular sections. So this is how we organize our Python code, and this is all that I had for today. Make sure you are able to download Python and the Anaconda distribution, and you're able to open a Jupyter notebook. So starting tomorrow, we will start understanding what is Python from a hands-on perspective by understanding the different data types and so on and so forth. If you have any questions, as always, post them in the chat. I will get back to you as soon as I can. Stay tuned for tomorrow. See you soon.